You love using the term "tussy" for butt. It's your favorite thing.
It's my go-to for sure. And like, you know, like and for like the nether regions, I always like calling it C and B's.
Oh, that's good.
I always like calling it my C and B's.
Even
because
for girls, you call it the C and B's.
You can, but like the C in that scenario would be a little naughtier. And a little frowned upon societally.
Yeah, well, I like that terminology how the British use it, you know, where it's like it has nothing to do with gender. It's like if you're acting like that, you will be a that.
Right. Like I've wanted to call you that 1,000 times.
Yes.
I have probably only a few hundred, but the other couple thousand, I feel like I should have just not had that thought in my head that I shouldn't. And I don't like
you, my friend. And you. Welcome back to Monday Night Conversations. I am one half of your hosting team here at MNC. The name is Scott Macklin. On the other side of the Google Meet screen is the second half of our hosting team. His name is Matt Thompson.
Hi, I'm the better half.
Wow, that's a matter of opinion, Matt.
Oh, I speak of it as fact.
Well, I think you should think you're the better half, and I praise you for your positive attitude and self-worth.
That means a lot, actually. Thank you so much.
If you like the show, and you know, even if you don't, why don't you go to the podcast app you're listening to, rate it 5 stars, go to the YouTube page, even more, subscribe to the YouTube page, and like the friggin' videos we do. Because listen, that's not for our health. That's for you people, okay? So go to the page and like it.
Can you like our show on a rotary phone?
I don't know if rotary phones have the liking function, Matt.
What if we get a hotline for those who have rotary phones and listen to us in passing?
Yes. Okay. All right. Here's the plan. We're gonna get a rotary phone only hotline.
Yes.
And we're gonna get for the probably dozens of people listening on rotary phones. We'll get them an option to give us feedback, which is what we want ultimately.
I just want people to be able to hear us and interact with us no matter how far along they are on this technological journey.
Yeah, no, I agree. Even if you're like back in the 70s, Matt wants to interact with you.
Yeah. Well, even more so. Because you know what the 70s means.
I don't. Good music?
The 70s is not known for like having the best music.
No, but it did have some really good music if we want to look back at it.
I would say early 70s was really, really strong. Like better than the last couple of years of the 60s even maybe in terms of like output. But it got really disco punk heavy in the late 70s, and I'm not a disco punk guy.
That's true. I like some of the early punk music and new wave music, got to admit.
I like The Clash. I do like The Clash, but
new wave. Oh, you're so new wave, Matt. You're part of the new wave, aren't you?
But I don't, and I'm saying I don't, sir. Like the Sex Pistols.
Oh, you're not a fan? Why aren't you a fan of Sex Pistols? They did it hardcore, didn't they?
I think that they were really only just kind of an idea, not a band. I mean, Sid Vicious literally did not know how to play the bass guitar and was a heroin addict. So it was just literally pulled off the street and given a guitar to stand there. So it's almost like the first iteration of a boy band in a way, but in like
it wasn't a band, it was an attitude, wasn't it?
It was a mindset. It
was an attitude and a mindset.
Yes.
Getting off of the Sex Pistols and late 70s punk rock and new wave music for that matter, even though, listen, I could talk for hours about it. I did want to talk about
because you do like
things.
Devo and the song Whip It very much.
I don't necessarily love the band Devo. I just love those red like hats that they wore, you know?
You found Devo to be intoxicating.
I found Debo Samuels to be intoxicating.
Well,
that's a guy named.
So do I. The first time watching Deebo Samuels run over somebody is like, that guy's a receiver. Ooh, that makes me happy.
Matt, one of my absolute favorite basketball writers and personalities, Zach Lowe, got released from ESPN this week. And not only is he one of my favorite, he is heralded as one of the top guys in the business. And it just it goes to an overarching like loss of talent from ESPN. And I'm not really sure what's going on over there.
I think it really comes down to one thing only. Zach Lowe wasn't a viral sensation. He's not gonna say anything that is going to cause people to click on the button or to click on the article like Stephen A. Smith would, or like Shannon Sharp or these other, Pat McAfee for that matter, always saying something controversial, always having
Kendrick
something.
Perkins, yeah.
Right. These are the guys that they're promoting. They're the people that are getting the airtime. Zach Lowe does not get as much airtime as somebody of his credentials deserved in the first place. I mean, yes, he would be on the shows and stuff like that, but you're talking about one of the best basketball minds out there. I mean, flat out, he's one of the best basketball minds out there analytically and can report and talk about the game in a way that very, very few can.
Yeah, what I don't understand is I read that he was let go because he was making over $1 million a year, which is a ton of money for a basketball writer and personality. But Zach Lowe had his own podcast, The Lowe Post, which was one of the best basketball podcasts out. I would listen to every single episode. Does ESPN not know how to make money on? Like, to me, you make that money up on the podcast, and everything else he does is gravy for you. You know, it's icing on the cake, and I'm not sure. Like, I think you're right in the terms of that ESPN is moving their model to like soundbite people, but at the same time, they just renewed their rights for the NBA for 11 years. So who's going to be like? Is Stephen A. the only person that's going to be talking about basketball? Like, is that what's happening?
I think theen're highly invested in Malika Andrews as kind of the face and the host of most things. They brought Greeny in. Mike Greenberg now is doing. He's essentially Mike Greenberg's the host for anything important at ESPN. Yeah. He's taking over the NFL draft. He's doing
Get Up.
He does he does all this stuff. So there's that.
Malika Andrews is great, but she's a host. She's not.
No, I agree.
A basketball writer and a basketball mind. I'm sure she knows the game well.
You still have people there, but first of all, when Zach Lowe writes, he doesn't just write a few paragraphs. If he does his 10 things I don't like column, or 10 things I do, or things I like and things I don't like column, that's kind of his column that he's famous for. Mm-hmm. You're talking thousands of words.
Right, it's a 5,000 word column
with and it's mixed with humor and insight. For ESPN to lose Woj. And if you guys didn't know this, Adrian Wojnarowski left ESPN last week to take over the general manager role at St. Bonaventure University for their athletic program. So you're basically losing your number one writer, the guy who's going to put out the best content of written word on the sport, and you're losing your information machine. I don't think they thought the Woj thing was coming, but it's even more surprising with the Zach Lowe firing based on the Woj firing because, you would think they need all hands on deck when they're going to be losing, the fact that they're no longer the go-to for late breaking news. The go-to now is Shams Charania from Yahoo.
At Yahoo. Yeah, that's a great point in light of the Woj stepping down, and St. Bonnie's is his alma mater, and he's long talked about how he loves the program, and that's how he's very much involved in St. Bonaventure sports. So good for him for leaving, but you're losing the two probably top basketball personalities at your company in Woj and Zach Lowe.
I don't know if they ever really use Zach Lowe like that, though. I think for
right, but okay.
I think for sophisticated basketball fans, he was an important voice.
Maybe personality wasn't the right term. You're right. I think the two basketball people who have status in the basketball information community.
That's a good point.
I think Woj and Zach Lowe are the two number one people who carry that carried that torch for ESPN. And listen, Stephen A. Smith is great. Yeah, but Windhorst was third in my opinion, and now Windhorst is supposed to now take over Woj's breaking news role, and that's gonna affect what he did, which was similar to Lowe in terms of writing stories and hosting his podcast, which I do like the Hoop Collective podcast a lot. But my overarching point is like there is a place for Stephen A. Smith, and he's connected, of course, and he can get guests. Not every basketball fan wants to hear sound bites about and wild takes about basketball all the time. And I think the people who like this podcast are the people who are included who don't necessarily want to go to Stephen A. Smith all the time for all their information. It's just the strategy with ESPN doesn't make any sense.
I think it goes for all sports, though, because, for instance, Chris Canty yesterday morning started screaming about how Joe Burrow is bad and just making really definitive anti-Joe Burrow statements when, the reality is Joe Burrow was very good last week. He really didn't have anything to do with his team losing the game. And, what can you do? But instead of, really saying what actually happened was that they didn't have an interior defensive line and can't stop anybody, and that's why they keep losing, he decided to rip.
They didn't punt.
But Chris Canty decided to rip into Joe Burrow. And then what happened after that? Every time I flipped on ESPN or looked at ESPN.com, I saw Chris Canty's face and what he said, and I'm like, that's all they care about. Yeah. That's really it. They care about trades, signings, and controversy. That's it.
Other news in the sports writer world, our beloved Kevin O'Connor, who literally feels like he grew up at the Ringer, is now over at Yahoo. He announced on his podcast called The Mismatch with Chris Vernon. I know we both love that podcast and probably will continue to listen to it with Vernon because he's great. But
yeah, I love Chris Vernon.
KOC, man, good for him. I hope he got a good deal. But Yahoo is building their division. I wouldn't be surprised if Lowe's there.
They're building a roster, but KOC's big thing, and that was his nickname at the Ringer. His big thing was draft analytics and draft prep and mock drafts. He wasn't very good at it. I mean, plain and simple.
I disagree with you. The Killian Hayes thing does not mean he took a swing on a player he thought was really good.
It's disqualifying.
I don't think it disqualifies him.
There was no human being on earth that thought Killian Hayes was anything special. He put him first, and the entire city.
He was still drafted 8th, Matt. He still went 8th.
I don't think he would even have gone 8th if somebody of his stature wouldn't put him at the top of his mock draft. I think the people in that room in Detroit were thinking, hey, this guy, he's a big deal. Kevin O'Connor, national basketball writer for the Ringer, thinks he's the best player. We can get him at number 8.
Let's go back for a second. But first of all, really quick.
But you don't think someone pro Killian Hayes would say that?
If any general manager department or scouting department is basing their draft picks on what basketball writers are saying, they're idiots, and they shouldn't have their jobs.
We're talking about the Pistons. I'm not talking about a good team.
Okay.
I mean, it's very likely that they are just talking to basketball writers and making decisions based on that. That's what it seems like.
So, Zach Lowe, we just went through it. Amazing basketball writer, a big-time presence in the world of basketball specifically. Listen to this list I have pulled up of, in the last 10 years, the amount of talent that's left ESPN. Ready?
Mm-hmm.
Bill Simmons, Jamel Hill, Dan Lebitard, Skip Bayless, Michael Smith, Keith Olbermann, Ryan Russillo, Colin Cowherd, Kerry Champion, Kenny Mayne, Trey Wingo, Mike Golick II, Bomani Jones, Pablo Torre, Maria Taylor, Wesley Morris, Matthew Barry, Mark Stein, Ethan Strauss, Jason Stark, Dana O'Neill, Danny Cannell, Trent Dilfer, Kevin Van Valkenburg, Jane McManus, Tom Rinaldi, Chris Fallica, Howie Schwab, Chad Ford, Nate Silver, and the 538 people. That is an incredible talent train. I mean, people are talking about a talent train from the Ravens, and they lost their D coordinator and 2 assistants. You know what I mean?
Sure. I don't think it matters. They're ESPN. I mean, those people are secondary by nature. The thing that people come for is the sport, They are always going to be secondary. They are never going to be as important as the product that's on TV. SportsCenter is the entity. That's what people are tuning in for. They don't care who the two hosts are. I mean, I do like some of the hosts more than other. Don't get me wrong, but I'm not turning it off if I don't like who I'm watching.
Right, but when we were growing up, I used to love the show The Sports Reporters, right? And now I understand that now is not a time where a show like that would thrive. And for those who don't know, Sports Reporters was literally come on at Sundays at like 10 a.m. and it would be like 4 or 5 sports reporters sitting around like a table talking about topics, the big topics of the week. But hold on. But that type of show can't survive right now in ESPN's universe. However, people would come to ESPN for different types of personalities. Now, it seems like ESPN is homogenizing to just one type of outlandish hot take type of personality, and that's I think in the long run is going to hurt them.
I agree with you because people don't want the outlandish part of the sports. It's okay every now and then, but like it's not that exciting. Like you're watching ESPN for knowledge about the sport that you care about. That's right. It. Whether it's outlandish or not, really a distant, far away cousin of what you're there for.
So this nuanced, thoughtful opinion of people like Zach Lowe and earlier like the Nate Silvers and even the Dan Lebetards, who was a little outlandish, but like in an entertaining way, in my opinion, that's gone now. Now it's just like the hot take and the outlandish like screaming at the screen of someone is either the best or they're the worst.
Right, but did they need any of those people? No. There's not one person that they needed.
I mean, well, time will tell if you're right or not. But
I think losing Simmons was a bigger deal than anybody that you named because he was a content producer. So right. The fact that they're a content company that needs content and they fired the guy that created 30 for 30 and whatever else, that's going to be a content drain. We realize that as we're watching the Mr. McMahon documentary that's made by him that would have been on ESPN if he was still there. That's kind of
for the next episode because we're going to finish watching it and talk a lot about that on the next episode.
Yeah, for sure.
No, but Matt, all these people created content. I mean, they all wrote for ESPN and were on their TV shows. And Zach Lowe was on NBA Today.
But they could all be. But okay, but let's be real about Zach Lowe on TV. He was piss poor on TV. Piss poor.
He started off very bad. Got way better.
But you can replace. But he's replaceable on TV, like that. You can replace him with anybody on TV. His knowledge. His job's not real. He's a writer for basketball. He's giving opinions. If he's making too much money and they're making cuts, he's not good enough on TV. He's not a handsome enough man to go ahead and be what $1 million worth for them when they're in a budget crunch. He's just not that guy. He's not TV friendly.
Right, but you just spent all that money on the NBA. Wouldn't you want to keep the best people around who are reporting and talking about the NBA?
Sure, but if you have a budget cut, you have to make fire. I mean, obviously, this comes from the top. I'm sure. Most people working at ESPN didn't want Zach Lowe fired, but I'm sure there's a budget cut coming directly from Disney that said you need to eliminate however many positions, and Zach Lowe making, like you said, $1 million a year could have meant 10 other jobs. So it was either Zach Lowe or 10 other jobs.
2 weeks before the season, also, it doesn't make any sense to me. None of it makes any sense.
It doesn't make sense, but it's also, I don't blame them because they don't need any of these people. They are way bigger than any one person will ever be. So it doesn't really matter. I mean, I don't like how a lot of these people try to make themselves bigger than ESPN, to be honest with you, including Bill Simmons. I thought he was out of line because they're the entity. They're what matters. They're the product, not you. You're there to support the product. You are hired by this company and paid ridiculous money to support the product, not be on a one-man show promoting yourself. And that's what some of these people do. I'm not saying Zach Lowe's that person, but a lot of those people on that list that you had.
But Stephen A. Smith is that person, and Pat McAfee is that person.
Sure.
And Shannon Sharp is that person.
Right, but it works for a select few. It does not work for everybody. And Zach Lowe just, he wasn't good enough on TV for ESPN. He didn't belong.
But the TV was not the reason he was hired and getting paid all that money. It was the connections he made in the NBA, and it was his nuanced opinions and insider like articles and breakdowns of basketball. And first of all, again, I'm going back to this point I already said. The fact that they couldn't make that money back on his podcast tells me something's really broken with ESPN, that they couldn't make $1 million a year on that pod. That I hear him read ads. What were they paying? What, $5,000 an ad? I don't understand how that works. Like,
I hear
him read ads every podcast.
Well, I think there's been a problem with their podcast model for a long time, because they had the Bill Simmons podcast for years, and it was literally the highest rated sports podcast on earth, and they allowed it to walk out the door. I understand they might have been given an ultimatum by the NFL to get him out of there, but yeah, I mean it doesn't really matter. They're increasing their sports coverage. They're increasing their sports rights deals. They've got more televised sports per year than they've had almost ever, really. So like I'm not going to be upset about anything. Like, these guys are all going to land on their feet. Like I said, Bill Simmons, who got fired, opened up a haven for great writers in The Ringer, and you still have Yahoo, you still have news, you still have select newspapers. And,
well, NBC is gonna. I'm sure NBC is gonna.
And so is Amazon.
Zach's door. Amazon, maybe.
Yeah. Amazon is 100% going to want a basketball department that covers the league, that gets news, all that good stuff. I think Amazon's spending way too much money, and they're way too invested not to have other avenues for people to get to their games.
It just seems like ESPN is doubling down on the NFL games, NBA, and the SEC, and saying everything else we don't give a shit about.
That's true. That's pretty much how it was, and including the Big Ten. They basically chose the SEC over the Big Ten, which really starts tonight with the Georgia-Alabama game. Zach
Lowe will be fine. It just, the overarching point here is that ESPN just seems to be doing weird things for I just can't see the strategy. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense, because we both know that for a company as big as that, is there really enough financial constraint that you need to get rid of one of your best writers who makes $1 million a year when you're literally throwing around billions every day? Like, it's
well, Stephen A. Smith is going to sign for $25 million a year when his contract is up, I think, at the end of 24. So, we'll see.
See, like, if I ran ESPN, I would like. I think Get Up's a great show. I think it incorporates their talent very well. But I think Stephen A. Smith shows it doesn't incorporate anybody but Stephen A. Smith. I agree. I'm not necessarily sure it's a good thing for the network. I think his rating.
Shannon Sharp put a porno on Instagram Live 2 weeks ago, and he's still nothing happened. Now, I'm not saying they should fire him or anything. I'm just saying, like, if you want to give someone repercussions, that would probably be where to start.
I agree with you. We're on the same page. It's strange, but like, at the end of the day, I'm as interested as I am in sports media, and I do listen to it. I like knowing about it. I don't really care if the product is what I want it to be, and I still like a lot of the SportsCenter anchors. I think Gary Streisky is going to be a star. I think he's phenomenal. I think Randy Scott's one of the most likable people on TV. These are people that I just think the world of. So I think there's other people there that might get other chances too, doing other things that you'd be surprised. Like this guy Gary Streisky, for instance, his personality explodes off the screen. I don't know what they're going to use him for. Maybe it's there. Maybe he moves somewhere else. But that's a name to look out for.
I don't really watch SportsCenter like that anymore. I watch PTI, and if I'm home in the morning, I'll watch Get Up or First Take.
I just have ESPN on most of the day. I just have it on. I just have it on. So like, if there's a segment I'm interested on, I'll look. I'm always so like that. That's all.
No. I would do that too. I don't have cable, so like I have to physically it's a lot harder for me to go to ESPN to watch something. And their app is so stupid that it just doesn't make sense. They just don't have ESPN 1, ESPN 2. You have to select the live show, but sometimes it's buried. Their app is really stupid.
I agree. I've always had difficulty with their app.
Anyway, fascinating. I really want to see where Zach Lowe lands, and you know what? I'm going to consume his content wherever he goes because he's thoughtful, he's smart, and I like hearing what he has to say.
I feel the same way.
I'm going to do something that I think is unprecedented on this show, Matt.
You are not going to the bathroom on the show.
No.
You're not doing
number 2. Not even a number 1?
Are you going to come out?
I am going to talk about college football for the second consecutive show.
Okay, that was going to be my third guess. Okay, good.
Yeah. Does the name Matt Sluka ring a bell?
It did not until this week.
For those who don't know, Matt Sluka was the quarterback of UNLV, and he had transferred in the transfer portal from Holy Cross. Mm-hmm. He was a very good quarterback at Holy Cross, a dual-threat quarterback, runner, thrower. He went to UNLV in the transfer portal, and after 3 games, he has left the team because he says he was promised $100,000 to do, which is totally legal, and he has been only given $3,000. So there's a lot of layers to this. First of all, this is the first of I think many of these situations that are coming up.
This is the most confusing situation I've ever seen in sports. I'm not even joking. This team is 3-0. Yeah. They're in the Mountain West, and they just agreed to go to the Pac-12. So they're about to get a ton of money from all these people. They're in the middle of Las Vegas, and we're talking about $100,000. People literally wipe their behinds with $100,000 in Las Vegas on a daily basis. Yeah. You're telling me you can't get one booster to give your starting quarterback of a 3-0 team $100,000 when people
with their schedule, they have an inside track now to go to the playoff.
Well, not
the
12-team
playoff.
They don't have a quarterback now. It's over.
Well, I actually was listening to someone today say that they really like their backup quarterback too. Who knows? They'll be fine.
I mean, you're talking about
if they're going to continue.
You're talking about the backup quarterback. There's like a grown, seasoned, veteran at this point. So like having a guy like that who can just, it's almost like Cam Rising, who's the University of Utah quarterback. He's been there since basically the 1980s. And back when you like college, there's always those guys that you feel like have been at the school for a decade. There's always that one guy who's maybe blew up as a freshman, redshirted as a sophomore because he got hurt, and was still and was there 3 years later. That kind of situation.
The Chris Winkies.
Chris Winkie played baseball for a decade, so he didn't even want to play football until he failed.
Yeah, he was like 28 playing with 18-year-old freshmen. It was really funny.
But there, and I said, and I think I don't know if I've said it on the podcast or in private, there needs to be contracts for these things, and there needs to be regulations. I'm not a pro-government guy. I'm not a libertarian either, but I do think that when you're dealing with 17 to going on 18-year-old kids, and you're dealing with, look, he's offered $100,000. He's the freaking Holy Cross quarterback. What do you think? Mm-hmm. What do you think? Dylan Gabriel, who went from Oklahoma to Oregon this year, was asking for. You're talking 7 figures at that point. So
the best quarterbacks in the country are making in the $1 to $2 to $3 to $4 million range. I mean, I know those aren't in the hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Well, I know. Like I said before, I know Ohio State has spent between $20 and $40 million last year on NIL. So with half the roster being walk-ons that aren't getting NIL money, most of these guys are millionaires. I mean, it's a professional organization.
I do want to say that UNLV has denied that they offered him this money, and it was apparently offered by an assistant coach, and I don't think, as far as I've read, Sluka hasn't announced who the coach was who said it, or that information hasn't come out or whatever. But this is
How can they deny a college graduate who just left Holy Cross as a 4-year starter, a veteran, a member of the university in good standing? They lured him to the desert on the promise of money. He probably didn't care about going to UNLV. He would have went somewhere else. He's a guy. He was a guy with eligibility who can play, who was ready to go. They said, "We'll give you $100,000," which is probably the going rate for a high-end 1AA player to go to. I mean, that's probably what they're going for. And they probably played games with him for weeks. If he got $3,000, it means they were nickel and diming him to death. And he was like, "You know what? screw you guys, I'm going home.
Right, and that the $3,000 was to help him move. Like it wasn't like it was like here's $3,000 extra cash. It was literally to help him get across the country. But this
is a program killer. It's a program killer for UNLV though.
This is 100% the NCAA's fault because when the NIL came in, the NCAA structured it as such because they didn't want to lose any of the money that they were getting. So they were like, "Oh, we're not going to like revenue share from our money. We're going to let boosters and the universities like set who can give them money and how much money it costs." And if the NCAA set up a system where there was like an overarching person at each college, like a GM or a comptroller or something like that to handle the money, the coaches don't want to be doing this. They're recruiting their players year round now because everyone is tempted to leave with the first person who offers them a couple $100,000.
Yeah, I mean, there's got to be a way that they can that the players and the universities too to protect both parties.
Yeah,
there needs to be contracts.
There has to be.
If you're paying somebody, you're essentially saying that they're an adult enough to pay them. So put it in writing that you're going to give whatever you're going to agree to, and if you both agree, fine. But guess what else?
Right.
But I think here's the fear when you're going to do some of these contracts. Some of these coaches are going to make them sign multi-year contracts. And then you're going to have players that are going to feel stuck at their universities. And then you're going to have players sitting out of their universities and holding out. And it's a really dangerous path.
Well, that's
really
what
dangerous.
The NCAA opened up, dude. I mean, that's what it is, man.
Well, the NCAA was too greedy for too long. And just took, and they tried to punish every little thing, and they made it impossible for anybody to function. They should never have cared about buying these kids dinners and buying these kids, clothes and crap like that. It was wasted time, but it made everyone rebel. It made everyone against the NCAA.
These kids were always paid under the table.
Yes.
And now there was never the top tier athletes were never only student athletes. They were always freaking paid. And now it's just a lawless Wild West system. Right, for the most part. Like some people wanted to like uphold traditional college athletics, amateur athletics. But for the most part, these kids have been paid for decades, right?
It just makes it so difficult for the mid-tier schools to keep their guys. It's almost impossible to keep your own players now unless you have a major NIL program. And what does that mean? It means you need to have boosters giving you millions of dollars every single year. A lot of these colleges are getting like some of these high-end boosters to give millions of dollars every single year because as if they're like the owner of the team. It's very confusing why people are even doing it. I don't care how much money I had. I'm not giving money to a college to pay a kid to play football.
Maybe for access to,
I'd rather give it to the freaking science department or something functional. I mean, like it's the dumbest thing you can do with your money I've ever heard of. Oh, yeah, he's going to play football for maybe 1 year for me if he's good enough on the practice field, which we don't know yet.
Well, listen, like I said, I think this is the first of many of these situations to come. And I'm truly surprised it hasn't happened yet, that it's taken like 4 years for this first situation to happen. But I will say, if the kid is telling the truth, which he probably is, I think he's completely within his right to leave the team, right?
Oh, there's not even a question.
But if he's not, it's extortion. So one way or the other.
I don't see a fifth-year senior quarterback extorting somebody.
I agree. No, I agree. I totally agree. I think he was promised the money.
Quarterbacks these days do not have the lifestyle that that Art Schlichter had in the early '80s with Ohio State when he was gambling and went to jail. Like it's a little different in 2024. You got a little bit more on your plate.
It's certainly not an Art Schlichter world anymore. I'll tell you that much for free.
No, definitely not. Definitely not.
Okay, Matt, let's move to some NFL stuff. I'm just going to get some quick hit topics that we were talking about over the week. You sent me a bunch of these, and I think we could hit them pretty quickly. We're already almost 40 minutes into the pod, so let's see how many of these we can get through in the next like 10-ish minutes. How does that sound?
Okay.
You sent this one to me earlier in the week, and I thought it was a really good take. The media has largely given Deshaun Watson a pass until this year, and he's been bad the entire time he's been in Cleveland. Like every time he's played, he's been bad. Now he did get injured, like from here in like last year. He got injured, but he was horrible before then.
I think it's more diabolical than that. I genuinely think the NFL put pressure on the media outlets because they're partners with them all. You've got coverage of it basically on every network, and you have this disgusting, horrible story where a monster is literally the highest paid player in your sport and the only player making guaranteed money, and he sucks. And why is that not leading every show? Why are we talking about CeeDee Lamb's faces on the sideline last week when you have a monster behind center in Cleveland? It's sick. It's sick. Cleveland is. I've talked to many people that live in Cleveland, and I've heard, and I've also heard a lot from people that are living in Cleveland on TV and otherwise. People hate the shot. They hate him.
I don't know how you
it's
can't hate him.
It's an embarrassment.
Like if he was a great quarterback, I could see how people would get over that because the NFL is life in America. The fact that he's horrible, and you're so right that like his like, I'm trying to phrase this right. His creepiness and his assault of women it doesn't come up on a weekly basis, and the fact that it doesn't is really strange.
Right,
like the fact that every single game they're not like, oh yeah, this guy's playing like bad, and don't forget he also assaulted 70 women. Like it is bizarre that that's not talked about.
Right. I mean, but like you see all the media coverage P. Diddy's getting right now with essentially doing the same category of stuff. I'm not saying one's worse, better, whatever. You can be the judge, read the material, and think whatever you want. But at the end of the day, P. Diddy's getting judged harshly throughout the entire media landscape. Where Deshaun Watson, they're talking about that he's not playing well. What the hell are we even talking about how he's playing?
Right.
Like, how is that relevant when another woman came out and said that she was assaulted? Like, what are we doing? Everything's going backwards. It's crazy.
No, I completely agree. There's a new suit out that I know that the Browns are looking into trying to void his contract.
Hopefully.
Shame the Browns, media. Shame them.
But guess what? They wouldn't be trying to void his contract if he had 40 touchdowns last year.
Right. 100%.
They wouldn't do it. They'd be like, You know what? We're going to wait till there's more information. We're not going to say anything till there's more information. Not this time. They're going to say, we're going to look into it and try to void his contract. There's language in his contract.
Now, along the same lines, the Chiefs just brought back Kareem Hunt after he had a domestic abuse issue 6 years ago.
I mean, do you need a running back that bad that you have to pull some guy that attacked a woman in your own city while he was playing for your team and caused an entire media firestorm that ruined your entire season 6 years ago? Because that's what happened.
Well, it's interesting how, like, just because we haven't seen it in our faces, he's allowed a pass where someone like Ray Rice, we saw the video, and Ray Rice never sniffed the NFL again after that.
He didn't, which makes this even more surprising because Kareem Hunt hasn't been good in years. He did nothing with the Browns. He was good on the Browns as like the change up back for I think 2 years, but that was also like 2-3 years ago. Okay, he's fine. He's not good enough to warrant being in the NFL after you attack a woman in public. I mean, Jesus Christ. I mean, if I attacked a woman in public and it got out there, I would never work again.
Right.
Like it just wouldn't happen. But these guys are literally attacking women. And it's just, hey, it's okay. I learned my lesson. What lesson did you learn? What lesson comes from that?
It's interesting how the media picks and chooses, like, who gets the pass. Like, why does Kareem Hunt get the pass? Why does Deshaun Watson get the pass for so long? But
Watson's situation was just so vile, though. Like, why is that not?
That's what I'm saying. Why does it happen? Remember the D lineman on Dallas a few years ago, Greg Hardy. So Greg Hardy was vilified out of the NFL. So why is Greg Hardy like? Listen, all the people who commit domestic violence are it's horrible. But why is Greg Hardy the villain when Deshaun Watson gets a third and fourth chance, when Kareem Hunt gets a third and fourth chance? I just don't understand
because Greg Hardy
pick and choose.
Because Greg Hardy was a defensive lineman with an attitude problem that they were okay going away from, whereas Deshaun Watson is owed $175 more million or $100 and whatever $million worth of guaranteed money, and they literally, if something blows up and they are stuck with that. They will not have a football team for the next couple of years. If they
cut him, they have a $175 million cap hit next year, which is over double what Russ's cap hit is this year.
Right, but so that's not possible. They can't cut him. I mean, what that means is literally that would take up 75% of the entire cap.
Yeah,
It's not, he's going to he'll make 40 or 50. He'll make 50 whatever $1 million next year. But they'll just send him home versus cutting him. That's for sure.
Yeah, they can't cut him. That's 100%. It's a non-option. They can't do it. It's just weird. NFL and the media surrounding the NFL picks and chooses who they want, and some of these guys aren't great guys, and it's just I just don't understand how it works. Maybe I never will. Matt, do you think the Dolphins are the worst team in the NFL without Tua?
Yes, I think they genuinely do not have a functional quarterback on their roster to the point of not being able to function on offense. Period. It doesn't matter who's at receiver. Skylar Thompson and Tim Boyle are just not getting it done. Tim Boyle's in the top 10 worst quarterbacks I've ever seen play NFL football.
Yeah, he's pretty bad. He was on the Jets for a hot second last year, and it was just very gross.
He's a disaster. It's ugly. It's sad. It's bad for the entire team. It's bad for the city.
It makes me think why the Dolphins didn't – like the Dolphins just thought, oh, Tua's good. He'll be fine for 17 games this year. They sort of like took it for granted, his health last year, and the fact that they don't have one of the best backups in the league is a real big mistake, I think, by their personnel department.
I agree. It's one of the biggest blunders I think we've got right now. And one of the most obvious things too. Like if you're the general manager and you have Tua, why wouldn't you be on the phone calling about Joe Flacco? Why wouldn't you be calling about Brett Hundley or any? I mean, really any of the Andy Dalton? Why is Andy Dalton in Carolina when he could be in Miami on a better playoff team backing him up? Like, why would Andy Dalton would choose living in Miami? I don't know. He is ginger.
Yeah, he does weird things.
Maybe the sun, not good for him in Miami.
But even still, like, we could name, like, why isn't Sam Darnold back there? I mean.
Sure. Darnold had a kind of a more direct line to start in Minnesota, and but also,
but that's the point, right?
What
the point?
I agree.
Tyrod Taylor, we can name 10, 12 like very capable backup quarterbacks, and none of them are Skylar Thompson or what's Patrick, whatever the fuck his name is in Miami.
Tim Boyle, yeah.
Tim Boyle.
The more you look at it, they have to think that they're seeing something in Skylar Thompson that I haven't seen. So, but they're professionals. They know what they're doing. They have to feel like they know what they're doing, and maybe he's lighting it up in practice. That's the only thing that I could think of.
I just think that they took for granted that Tua was going to be healthy for 17 games, and we're like, we got Skylar Thompson. He came in and won us a playoff game a couple of years ago against Buffalo when in all honesty, he lost, but they played well. But in all honesty, Buffalo gave them, I think, 2 touchdowns with like a fumble return and like a punt return for a touchdown. So
yeah, they weren't exactly on all
he
cylinders.
He didn't carve up the Buffalo Bills defense that game.
No, definitely not.
This is one
because they could be really exciting. That's all.
This is one that we touched on last week, Matt. That the cover 2 is killing the NFL. Do you think that?
I don't know if that's a little bit of hyperbole, as I'm known to do.
You?
No. Who me?
Who me?
I think it's definitely the way that defensive coordinators are running their offense. It's sad to watch the burners because there's nothing that they can do. I mean, these guys are 30 yards back playing deep cover 2, and it's every team, every game. That's why you're seeing all the horizontal passes. That's why you're seeing all this dinking and dunking and, 5 yards at a time up the field, these slog games that, low scoring, lack of passing yards. It's because of the deep cover 2. People want to be explosive. These offenses are designed to be explosive with regularity. But when you're keeping those 2 guys so deep, and you gotta, it's just too much to deal. It's just many teams are not disciplined enough to take what's given to them now. So you've got those teams that are just, passing when they should be running when they should be passing. It's not exactly working. And the games are boring. The scoring's way down, and the passing numbers are down. And it's just it's not as fun as it could be.
I agree with you there, but I'm going to disagree with your overall point. I don't think that cover 2 is killing the NFL. I think it swings in a pendulum. And for about a decade, 12 years, the offense was dominating the NFL, and now defenses are catching up. And you know what's going to happen? The defenses are going to be good for this year or this year and next year, and then the offenses are going to counter it, and then we're going to have an explosion of offense again. I don't think it's killing, as Mel Kiper called for the banning of cover 2. I think that's silly. I don't think it's killing the NFL. It is making it right now a less explosive, fun product to watch. That I will agree on, but I do think it's just the pendulum swinging, and we're going to get back to explosive offenses, if not the end of this year, certainly next year.
I don't think the quality of the offensive linemen is enough, and I don't think the quality of the running backs is enough for offenses to get to where they need to be quickly. I think that you have quarterbacks in place, you have receivers in place, but you got to remember, without reliable run games that are legit, none of these passing games really matter. I mean, if an NFL team knows you're going to pass, you're probably not going to do it. I mean, it's not a huge secret that you're going to you're probably going to be taken care of. So,
Matt, is Jaden Daniels the actual Caleb Williams?
Probably. I don't want to call it yet because
isn't that incredible, dude? That is such a mind frick.
And it's just crazy that LSU had 2 of these guys in 5 years to literally not be on the draft radar, break out in college, get drafted high, and then just to be awesome right away. I'm not sold on Jalen Daniels' future health, but he is talented as hell, man. That's all I got to say.
That last throw to Terry McLaurin in the corner of the end zone while getting smacked to win the game against the Bengals, that was crazy impressive. It had nothing to do with his legs either. You know what I mean?
No, I know. But it was a little lucky. Let's be real. He didn't really see where he was throwing. He just kind of threw it up there, and it just landed in the perfect spot. Like I would thank God more than him about that. That was more.
Luck. You say luck. I say preparation.
Yeah, that's fine. And he deserves it. He deserves any praise that you're giving him. He's awesome. He's outplaying both rookie quarterbacks right now. And I couldn't say anything better about him. I mean, there's nothing to say bad about how he's playing. Honestly,
no, he's playing incredible. The Commanders are 3-0, while Caleb Williams, who everyone was like, oh, he's in the best situation ever for a rookie quarterback, highly drafted rookie quarterback. He can't. He is antsy in the pocket. His footwork looks really sloppy. He's bolting early. His offensive line sucks. But it's crazy how a lot of times in the NFL, when everybody thinks one thing is going to happen, the opposite tends to happen. And that's certainly what happening with Caleb Williams. I don't think that's the case with Jaden Daniels. I think a lot of people thought Jaden Daniels was going to be really good. Now it's just a matter of him protecting himself and staying healthy.
I mean, you got to remember something about Caleb Williams though. He does not have any time to throw. He's in offensive line hell. When he actually has time, he's actually a top 5 quarterback in the NFL based on the numbers. When he has at least 3 seconds to throw, he actually is in the top 5 in every major offensive category that you'd want to be in the top 5 with.
In the 7% of snaps, he has enough. He has 3 seconds to throw. He's
right,
the top 5
but most quarterbacks get that a lot more than that percentage. So it's something to look forward to if and when he ever has a minute, 3 seconds to throw.
Last topic, really quickly, Matt, because we're running out of time.
You're pushing it.
Yeah, I know. Wide receivers who would have been running backs in the NFL 20 years ago. I got a list of 4 or 5 of them.
I'm going to hear it.
Do you want to hear it?
I want to hear it.
Malik Neighbors.
100%.
I think undoubtedly.
Jamar
Chase.
I think both of them were the names that I was thinking of first. So I agree. Yes.
Yeah. Well, Deebo Samuel's obvious. I think that's the obvious.
Well, there's no question about that. I mean, basically, Derrick Henry and him are, just switched. Just one. They had to flip a coin to see which one would play receiver, which one would play running back.
Right, and the two other ones that I'm questionable about, Rashee Rice. I think Rashee Rice would be a real good running back.
I like that call.
Tyreek Hill. I think if he trained a little differently, he would be bulkier and could have been a really good running back.
I think Tyreek could have been like an old school third down back, like an old school scat back type. Obviously with a lot more explosion.
Yes.
I don't think there was many scat backs that had his sort of speed. I think Tyreek Hill would have been a great running back. I mean, with how fast and explosive he is, like maybe he'd go down a little easy and wouldn't break a ton of tackles, but you got to think, put the ball in his hand 20 times.
I mean, he's like Darren Sproles on steroids, right?
That's kind of now. Sproles' bottom half was probably 2 to 3x Tyreek Hill, like that. Like Darren Sproles was essentially a bowling pin.
I just think it's funny that like all of these kids at young ages have been making business decisions to be receivers and not running backs. When we were growing up, everyone wanted to be the star running back.
Running back was where everyone wanted to be. Everyone wanted to be Emmitt Smith or Barry Sanders. That was it. It was the Barry Sanders, Emmitt Smith argument. It was more impressive than the quarterbacks, because the quarterbacks were boring. Quarterbacks back in the day were boring. No one really cared about being a quarterback. Everyone wanted to be Jerry Rice, Michael Irvin, Deion. You would play corner and shut someone down.
Because you needed that cannon. If you didn't have that cannon of an arm, then it was non-starter anyway.
And honestly, just offenses were so different back then. You'd only throw the ball 15 to 20 times max every game. And you'd run the ball X amount of time. You wouldn't, there was no real clock management back in the day. There's so many differences it's almost laughable that the NFL was even functional. But like some of these teams back in the day, like they used basically just guessing. It was basically just high school football on national TV. I mean,
think about Terry Bradshaw, right? Terry Bradshaw has 4 NFL championships, Super Bowls. He's a Hall of Fame quarterback, and he threw the ball like 12 times a game.
Yeah, he never threw. I mean, he never had a 4,000-yard season or anything close to it.
I don't think he had a 3,000-yard season.
No, and he never. And his receivers, Stallworth and Lynn Swann, never had a 1,000-yard receiving season.
None of them, and they're both in the Hall of Fame.
Right.
Crazy.
Right. I mean, it's just, you win 4 Super Bowls, you get to the Hall of Fame when you're famous.
Yeah, probably so. I guess so. That makes sense. All right, I'll take it back. They deserved it. Just kidding. They're Steelers. Fuck them.
Yeah, fuck them.
Matt, wow. We've done it. Our marathon session. You have got to get to bed.
I'm so tired.
It's late. Go to our Instagram page, our Facebook page. Follow us, like us, subscribe to the podcast. Get it pumping in your podcast apps. Go to the YouTube page and watch our videos. Subscribe. You get to see our handsome faces all over that YouTube page.
And for you religious folk, put us in your prayers.
Yes, please. Oh, good call, Matt.
Yes, all prayers should include Matt and Scott and Matt.
Well, thank you guys for listening so much. And Matt, thank you for being here.
You're very welcome. I'm glad that you are finally thanking me.
And take care of yourself.
And
each other.
Each other.
Thank you every episode, you piece of shit.